Now, this question will always give an event and ask how much something changed because of it, such as superpower tension, development of the Cold War. Now, this question is looking for you to give causes and explain consequences, results, and what happened as a result. Why did these events escalate? Now, it's an 8-mark question, so we're aiming for hopefully 2 paragraphs, 2 well-developed consequences, and about 10 minutes on this. Again, if you're targeting a lower grade, 1 really well-developed consequence will be enough to get you at least half marks. So here's an example of some previous exam questions, and you can see that we have got the event, and then we have got usually a focus on Cold War tension, development of the Cold War, effects in the Cold War, which is really the same thing. It just means, why did it make matters worse? I'm just highlighting a question from a few years ago, which bucks that trend, where it says tensions began to ease from the end of the 1960s. And this is where really you'd want to know a few things about data, things like the hotline being set up, SALT 1 being agreed, and so on. So with this question, we are going to look at writing an account of how the arms race led to superpower tension after 1949. Now, as always, the first step is planning. Check the events in the question. Make sure you're talking about the correct event. If a time frame is given, like events from 47 to 49, make sure you are focused on just that. You will not be really credited for anything you write that happens after that time period. If there's 2 events that are spoken about, like Yalta and Potsdam conferences, make sure you talk about both to show your knowledge. You would do 1 paragraph for each, so 1 paragraph on the consequence for Yalta, and then 1 paragraph on the consequence for Potsdam. Now, whilst we're planning, have a think, what are your 2 trigger points that would have led to larger tension? And if you can, try to decide which one would chronologically come first. The one that comes chronologically first would be your first paragraph, and this is useful if we're looking for higher marks here. So here, arms race is a bit of a tricky one because it's quite generic. So I have gone for fear of nuclear war. After 1949, USSR, both sides had nuclear technology. That meant they needed to fund more deadly weapons than a nuclear bomb. They were openly competing with each other. And that was a threat that both sides had nuclear weapons because it meant these nuclear weapons could be used now in a proxy war. It was more likely. And I'm also going to talk about brinkmanship, the idea of pushing the other side to the edge, and giving an example of the Cuban Missile Crisis there. During the Cold War, it was harder to show weakness, and it made negotiating complex situations really quite difficult, because if you push the other side too far, they might well retaliate with nuclear weapons. So start your paragraph off clearly with the question. I'd lay it out like this. One reason and then put the events that's in the question. So here we've got arms race, caused, and then put the larger consequence and the tension. So superpower tension after 1949 was, and start to explain the tension. That's quite wordy. Let's have a look how I've done it here. One reason the arms race led to superpower tension after 1949 was it started a fear of nuclear war. So we're telling our examiner our theme straight away. This is what we're going to be writing about. And then we need to explain what caused this. So the reason for this is partly due to. Here I've just put, the reason for this was partly due to the USSR now having successfully tested their own nuclear bomb in 1949. This meant that both superpowers now had access to and could produce nuclear weapons in huge numbers. Now we're focused on that consequence, that tension. Why is that going to cause more tension between the 2 superpowers? What exactly is happening? We're looking to bring in detail here. So this led to an increase in tension, as this increased the possibility of nuclear weapons being used in a war. Both sides created huge stockpiles of nuclear weapons and created even more powerful weapons, such as the hydrogen bomb in 1952, USA, which was far more powerful. USSR followed just a year later, which showed the gap was closing. Any conflict between the East and the West could now lead to nuclear war, such as proxy war in Korea. Here, General MacArthur called for nuclear weapons to be used. The seriousness of this comment was shown by him being fired, as this could have led the USSR retaliating with a nuclear weapon. Both sides now had to be careful. And then I'm linking back at the end. Again, if we've got time just to sum up that paragraph, tidy up for the examiner. Overall, the arms race led to superpower tension after 1949, as it created a real fear of nuclear war, with both sides not able to use these weapons if they felt they had to protect themselves. That's what this paragraph would look like. There's my theme. There's my link. And here I'm explaining that idea of tension, bringing in some good detail. And then I'm linking back to the question here. Now we need our second reason. So here my focus was on brinkmanship, this idea of now you've got all these nuclear weapons, both sides are trying to push each other. Think about how you can link it to the first paragraph if possible, because this pushes you up the levels. And start your second paragraph off with something along the lines of, this then led to, or as a result of this. So here I've gone for, this then led to brinkmanship, which was another reason why the arms race led to superpower tension increasing after 1949. And here's just that model paragraph. This then led to brinkmanship, which was another reason why the arms race led to superpower tension increasing after 1949. The reason for this is that neither side wanted to back down and look weak in front of the other, meaning they always had to consider the use of nuclear weapons. This led to increased tension, as it meant flashpoints in the Cold War always had the risk of one side firing a nuclear weapon. For example, in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the US would have had to have taken more direct action and invaded Cuba if the quarantine of boats had failed. This would have led to an ally of the USSR Cuba being attacked, and the threat of nuclear weapons being used would have been severe to stop the USA looking weak. Therefore, the arms race led to increased superpower tension, as it meant that if either side pushed too far, the other might retaliate with nuclear weapons, adding more superpower tension to every situation. And that is what that would look like as a full answer there. Again, about 10 minutes of writing, bringing that detail. And just a few things to think about here. Firstly, remember that the focus is on cause and consequence. What happened in the events that increased tension? Don't just write down everything you know about the event in the question. Be precise with your knowledge. Really focus on what the question wants. What happens? Why does that cause tension? Why does that develop the Cold War? Now, in the likely event you are looking at tension, try and think about what both sides wanted. So, for example, early on in the Cold War, Stalin wanted a weaker Germany, as they had invaded the USSR twice in a short period of time, whereas the US wanted a strong Germany to stop another dictator coming to power. And make sure you're using keywords from the question in your answer, such as the events, years given, and phrases that are in the question, such as tension, relations. And this will help you show a close focus on the question.